What's going on? Alright. Bald head equals beanie. So no glare. Alright. Okay, so now today we're going to find each of these four limits here. Okay. Now the difference between each of these is what we're approaching. Here x is approaching infinity. Here x is approaching negative infinity. Here x is approaching 0 from above, from the positive side, the positive direction. Here x is approaching 0 from below, from the negative direction. Okay, you see in each of these 1 over x, 1 over x, 1 over x, 1 over x. The 1 over x, that's a function. Okay, x is a variable here, right? It doesn't make sense for x to be fixed or x to be a specific number here if x is approaching infinity. We're asking what happens to this expression, the graph of this expression, as x gets huge, gets large. Infinity, as x gets large, x gets small, x gets close to 0 from above, positive from above there, x gets close to 0 from below, from the negative direction. Okay, so our function is f of x equals 1 over x. Okay, now you may have this memorized from your pre-calculus class. You may not. Try and do that a little better here. The graph of f of x equals 1 over x looks like so. Okay, now we can answer all of these questions just by looking at the graph. That's the way that I encourage you to do these types of problems, is by looking at the graph. Okay, as x gets large here, right, as x gets large, as x goes that way, gets huge, right, humongous x that way, look what happens to 1 over x. It gets tiny, it gets small, it approaches 0. So that's a 0 there. Okay, now for the flip side, x approaches negative infinity. As x goes this way towards negative infinity, what happens to f of x? See, f of x also tends to, or gets close to 0. Okay, now let's think, what happens as x approaches 0 from above? This plus here, that means to the right of. To the right or above in the positive direction of 0. Okay, so as x approaches from above, from the positive, what happens to f of x? F of x, you can see, goes, let's just follow f of x. Oh my gosh, it gets huge. It gets huge. Mathematical equivalent of huge, positive infinity. Okay. Now let's look at this last situation here. As x approaches 0 from below, from the negative. As it approaches from the negative, what happens? You can see that, let's just follow it, right? Follow f of x, and it gets really, really, really small. Okay? So, what's the mathematical equivalent of really small? Negative infinity. That should be it.